It's time to go back to basics this home day. Benjamin Moore paint expert Sharon Grech is here with Painting 101. So, Sharon, we can't just start painting, can we?
No, we cannot, no matter what size the room is. I'm in this tiny little laundry room, but it requires some prep in advance, right, Trace? You have to clean out the room, which is something you can do a few days in advance, which is not a bad idea. That's what I did, is start taking everything out, unscrew what you can, remove any hardware, tape off any hardware, take off your switch plates, do any patching and sanding and quick spot priming if you need to, but get everything ready so that when you start painting, you can just start painting.
Hey, would you ever just gather everything up in the middle of the room and throw a drop cloth on it? Like, does that count as clearing the space?
You know what, if it's a big enough room, absolutely, because you can, sometimes you can't move your furniture right out of the space, so you definitely want to do that. But in my small little laundry room, the more I can get out, the better.
Look at me, always looking for shortcuts. Okay, so once that's all ready,
yes.
Where do you start?
Okay, well, you know what, Trace, you've been doing this with me for a long time, so I am going to ask you, if you're doing any room and you've got trim, you've got walls, you've got ceiling, you've got everything, where do you think you would start? What surface?
Well, I wouldn't start with the ceiling. I guess start with the walls. Does that make sense?
Well, a lot of people probably do think that. I think instinctively we do want to start with the walls. But I've been talking to a lot of pros over the years and watched what they do, and ironically, Tracy, they do start with the ceiling.
Oh.
And then they do, yeah.
Whoops.
I bet Leo does the painting in your house.
Yes.
Then the trim, and then the walls.
Oh my goodness. And so Sharon and I have been working longer than I even care to say on camera together, and I got it wrong. Okay, so why do you want to start with the ceiling? Let's talk about that.
Okay, let's talk about that. I think what you really want to think about is it's the pain in the butt project, doing the ceiling. I hate getting up there with, even if I have an extension, it's a lot of work going up there. You tend to get more splatter on the ceiling. You don't want to splatter over your lovely new painted walls. So it's just a good place to start. And I'll show you, actually I'll pick up got a little bit of the ceiling paint in here. The other thing is, if you start with the ceiling, you don't have to be super tidy and worry about the walls. So I'm going to put a little bit of my ceiling paint on my brush here, and you can see that I can be a little bit messy. So I'm going to start with the ceiling, and you start brushing in, because you know you have to brush all the way around the perimeter, so that's a whole job in itself. You can do this, and I don't know if you can see, but I'm not being careful. I'm getting some of the paint on the wall, and it's okay, because later when I cut into the wall, it's going to be easier. So you can go all the way around the perimeter, being a little bit messy, and then you can take your roller, and then once you've done the entire thing, you can go all the way around and roll your ceiling. And then while you're waiting for the ceiling to dry, or you want to get, you know, 1 or 2 coats, but even once you're waiting an hour for the ceiling to dry, then it's time to do the trim. You might want to leave the trim to last, but I'm going to show you why I don't and why a lot of professionals don't. So I've got my trim paint. I put my tiny little bit of paint on there for now. I've got my walls are still messy, they're just all prepped. I start putting the trim on. And same thing, I can be a little bit messy. In fact, I want to get that trim paint into the edge everywhere around. And then when that dries, again, just like the ceiling, I'm going to be able to cut in my wall paint over top of the trim paint. So again, you want to maybe now go back to your ceiling, then do a second coat of trim paint.
Okay, very
Make
interesting.
sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And are you using the same paint for your trim that you're using for your walls?
Good question. I am not, and most of us like the trim to be a little bit shinier. It's going to get a little bit more abuse, so I'm using Advance in a semi-gloss finish for the trim. That is a really good question though, Trace, because what I should have also shown here, when you're putting the paint on with the trim, try not to be too goopy. So I said you can be a little bit messy. I don't mean drips, okay? You want to feather it out so it's nice and smooth, so that when it dries and you're taking your wall paint in, so this is all dry, you're going to cut your wall paint in, and I'm right-handed, so this is kind of awkward, but I'm going to be able to kind of go right in against there and get a nice straight line with my wall paint, and then I don't even need to tape. But if you feel more comfortable taping, absolutely, once the second coat of trim paint is done and you're getting ready to do your walls, tape it off, and that's no problem at all. But honestly, try just cutting in with a really good angle sash brush. You'd be surprised.
Listen, if I can, skip a step, I'm trying to skip a step. So yeah, I think that's a smart way to do it. So you've done the ceiling, you've done the trim, and now are we ready to paint the wall?
Yes, so you can now go crazy. So you've done the trim, we've done the 2 coats, we've taken you've taped it if you want to. Wait till it dries, obviously, tape it. But like I said, I think if you use a good angle sash brush, you want to cut in all around the trim and the ceiling with your wall paint. I'm using a color called Moonshine in Eggshell. So it's quite subtle when it's wet, but there will be a bit of more color when it's dry. But you can see how I can cut in even up at the ceiling here. Put a little bit there, so a trick for cutting in, so you don't need tape. And then go right up to the top, and then just don't drink a lot of coffee before you do this, and you should be able to get a nice straight line. Do that all the way around, and then take your roller and go and do your 2 coats of paint, and then you're done.
Amazing. Sounds so easy. I can't wait to see it when it's done.
Sounds so easy.
Right? It's going to be amazing, I'm sure. And a great refresher. Thank you, Sharon, even for me.